Okay, so she has nearly 3 decades under her belt as a professional actor, working frequently with Quentin Tarantino, who actually co produced a film with her. By the way, she also writes, directs, and produces. A true steward of the craft of filmmaking, when she is not making movies, she teaches and coaches actors. She's also a published author of numerous novels, including a book that every actor should be reading called No, that's Know, No Small Parts. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
All right. Now, Laura, again, definitely thank you for joining us today. I want to jump right into it. Now, there is a video on your YouTube channel, and we'll put the link up here with Richard Dreyfuss, where you guys are talking about acting in the zone. Now, in the video, you compare acting to being a god or giving birth. Now, having complete control over your emotions and the audience. Now, there's no doubting that your love and respect for what you do. When did you realize that acting was something that you wanted to do, and what was the inspiration that propelled you in that direction?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, although it's a weird story. But I first want to say those two quotes about acting making you feel like a god or giving birth. I want to be clear that I, to my knowledge, have never been a god nor given birth. But that sense of creation, that sense of creating an entire universe, is what I was talking about. And that's different than that thing of feeling that you are feeling that you're controlling the emotions of the people watching you. That's a little different than that. And my sentiment about that is a little different. So I'll answer the question at large, which is, how did I get here? It's a weird story. I had a regular career path planned out. I was 25 and I was a homeowner, and I was married, and I was getting ready to start my doctorate in creative writing and English literature, which is what my master's is in. And I thought I was going to be a professor and write novels, and that would be my path. And so I was on that path, and I was getting ready to start schooling, and I was planning, I was meeting with advisors and getting all that geared up because it's a huge undertaking. And I was running a dress boutique. Jessica McClintock had opened her first East Coast dress boutique, and I ran that. And I modeled, and I taught college English at night. And so I was at a modeling gig in New York, and I was coming home on the train, and I sort of had my head leaned against the window, and I'm looking out the window, watching the world go by, clack, 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 and I heard a voice. And the voice said, "You're supposed to be an actor." Now, I don't know if that voice came from somewhere deep inside of me, or whether that voice came from somewhere on high, or whether it was just my subconscious yelling from the back of my head to the front of my head. I have no idea. But I wasn't in the habit of hearing voices. So when I did, I paid attention. It turns out that Rene Russo heard the exact same phrase. So maybe there's a voice that's just out there going to, you should be an actor. I don't know. And I got the call, but it felt like a calling. And that was weird because, as I just stated, my life was sort of not about any of that. Mm-hmm. And so I did something crazy. I quit all my jobs. I moved to New York. I sold my house, and I started studying acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And the very first day I walked in there, I felt home. I felt known. And it was what I was supposed to be doing.
That's crazy. So are you...
So, man, she said she heard a voice, and the first thing you respond with is, "That's crazy." Goodness gracious. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to hear a voice is one thing, but to drop everything and go and do this 100%, that I mean, that's a little crazy.
It's out there.
Well,
I'd
and
have did it.
25 is young for a human, but it's pretty old for an actor, and especially a female. 25 is, you're getting up in your twilight years. And I didn't know how to act, so I went to the American Academy to learn how to be an actor. That was, I spent 3.5 years in New York learning, and then I went to LA and spent another 2 years learning before I even tried to get an acting job, because I wanted to be competitive. And I knew that the women my age were like Helen Hunt and Jodie Foster. And, like, how is that supposed to, they've been working since they were, Jodie Foster been working since she was in diapers. And
Yeah.
Helen Hunt been working since she was like 8 or something. I mean, these were really, like, how was I
Yeah.
supposed to go up against them?
So for aspiring actors out there, from the time that I don't want to even say you made that decision, you just heeded the call. From the time you left the old world behind and joined the acting community, what was that journey like from making that decision to getting your first role?
Action-packed adventure, I would say, insofar as that I was doing lots of things that were unfamiliar to me. I grew up in DC area, so I'd been to Manhattan plenty of times, but I'd never lived in Manhattan. And so that's in and of itself an adventure. And it was the late 80s, early 90s. So it was the OK Corral back then. It was pre the cleanup, So it was a nitty gritty city. And then I moved to LA. I didn't know one person there. I just packed up my car and moved there. And I went from having a master's in teaching college to I was tearing tickets at a movie theater for $6 an hour, and like having to figure out. I basically had to start my entire life over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an adventure, but like most adventures, I met people along the way that are still in my life today. Like Jannard Burks, I met at the American Academy. You guys might know him from Devil in a Blue Dress or Hangover. He plays Mike Tyson's bodyguard in Hangover. Snake Eyes. Anyway, he's fabulous. 4 brothers. He's amazing. And he and I met when he was like 19 or something, and we became best buds in New York. And to this day remain madly deeply in love with our friendship. So that's one of the great things about going on a big adventure, is that you meet other big adventurers who are crazy like you, I guess.
You can kind of see that when you go down your IMDb and you go from one project to another. There seems to be some kind of connection. Like you're getting your foot in the door somewhere, you make an impression, and then you get a call later on from that same group of people or something. But that actually kind of leads into.
Yeah, I was going to say now, one of the things you mentioned the '90s earlier. Now, your first role was in a short film written and directed by Richard Dreyfuss called Present Tense, Past Perfect in 1995. Now, during our deep dive, because we love to do our research here, there seems to be a friendship and mutual respect that goes way back between you two. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I should say that despite the fact that I only have a little line in that, I actually am the reason that project happened. I didn't know that was called producing back then. I should have gotten a producer credit instead of my little teeny actor credit I was so excited to get. But yeah, the people who made that movie asked me if Richard had anything that he wanted to direct, and he did, and I knew that. So yes, Richard and I were friends. We've been friends for now. What are we at? This is 1992. I think I met him.
Okay.
So, but if you had deep dived enough, I don't ever talk about this part, but our friendship did start as a romance. So there are a few pictures out there on the internet of us on red carpets back in the back in the day.
You'll find it.
But in any case, our friendship's been through so many evolutions and revolutions and all that he wrote the foreword for my book, No Small Parts. He and I double date when he comes to New Orleans to shoot. He's been instrumental in helping me with my career, and I've been instrumental in helping him with his. I used to be his reader and read his scripts for him. And, we've just really, he's been a mentor for me. I've been an inspiration for him. And we've just been there for each other for a really long time now. I've watched his children go from little kids to now one of them has 2 children of her own. So
It kind of cued me in on, because I saw a picture with you guys and some kids, and it looked like some kind of service, like a christening or baptism or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. I saw a priest.
Oh, with the Pope.
The Pope. Oh, not just the priest.
There you go.
My apologies, Pope.
Yeah, we met the Pope, John Paul II.
Okay,
JP2, man. You know it's JP2?
Yeah,
the face.
JP2 in the Vatican.
That
was very cool.
Some type of ceremony.
That was very cool. Yeah. Well, and we did that as a family, but I really was just a travel companion at that point. I mean, like I said, our romance was the jumping off point, but our friendship has had all sorts of shapes. So
that's really cool that you guys were able to start on a relationship level and transition it in a healthy way to something where you guys can both benefit from each other.
That's amazing.
I feel like when you love somebody, that love, it can evolve.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't get destroyed in the process of loving.
Well, I'm not a very destructive person, and I can take a lot. So
we saw in Django.
Yes.
So in 1996, you started in the Larry Sanders Show, and I was curious what it was like working with Gary Shandling, and I'm even more curious if David Duchovny is as cool in person as he seems to be.
Well, I have to say, one thing that's very different about David Duchovny is that he's super educated. And I never told people I was educated in LA because it would separate me from them. In our job, not only do you not need to have a college degree, you could be seen as a moron for wasting your youth in college. And certainly you wouldn't have a graduate degree. You'd have to be 150 years old to have a graduate degree. So I just didn't talk to people about my education. And when I met David, his brother directed commercials. So I'm sure he still does. And so they were both, guys who worked a lot. And they're just smarty pants. They're super smart. And they stand out in that crowd because they're also super educated. Mm-hmm. And that's just it's not the norm there. A lot of the agents and behind the scenes people might be educated, but for actors, it's not part of the process. It's not part of the road.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. I mean, I'm a Southerner by heritage, but I grew up on the East Coast, and so it was kind of nice to meet a sort of an East Coasty kind of person with the same sort of upbringing I had. And the same sort of values I had been raised with in that way. So yes, I very much enjoyed working with him. Gary and I originally met, I can't remember if I originally met him at Ivana Chubbick's acting studio, where he was a very longtime friend of Ivana Chubbick, who was my coach. And so I can't remember if I met him there, because he used to come audit the class sometimes. Or I think the first time I met him in person was at Kevin Costner's house. And he angered me. And so I hit him on the head.
Well,
and then he did it again.
Was it like a boop or like a full on?
He was sitting down and I was standing up. So I just went on his forehead.
Like a dog. No. Okay.
It had some weight behind it. And then he did it again. So I did it again. I hit him twice. And about a week later, I get the call to go in and read for his show. And I was like, oh, like I wasn't entirely sure how that was all going to go. But, the first call, you don't meet any producers or stars or what, you just meeting casting people. So I went to the casting and I'm sitting in the waiting room and he comes in, probably to check out the talent, but anyway, he comes in, he peeks around the room, he looks at all the girls, and then he sees me and he goes, and you could tell he was trying to place me. And I was like, yeah, we met at Kevin's a week or so ago. And he's like, you come to my office after you audition. And I was like, okay. So he goes back to his office. I do my audition. It goes pretty well. And then afterward, and in the time that I should be going, yes, yes, in the bathroom or something, I am now being called down to the principal's office. And I walk in and he made me promise that if I got the job that I wouldn't strike him anymore. So I did. And I got the job and we had a great time together. I really loved working with him. And, you know, over the years, I would run into him quite a bit because, like I said, he was Ivana's friend and he just was around town. We had a lot of mutual friends. And the last time I ran into him, he was coming out of a building I was going into to audition. And I think he was an incredible comic. He was a smarty pants, and he really contributed so much to our legacy of comedy and storytelling. And I wish that during this pandemic, both of his series had made the rounds because they're both so good.
Yeah.
Like, really good television.
Yeah.
Larry Sanders Show is very ahead of its time. Like, shows are just now doing that now.
The Gary Sanders Show. That was great too.
Yeah.
Yes, I can agree. As we keep taking a trip throughout the 90s, it's 1997. You were featured in a star-studded episode of Friends. Everybody loves that. That also featured Ben Stiller and Jon Favreau. Let me ask you something. I'm an actor myself now. Of course, I've never done TV as far as studio audiences. What is it like for a professional like yourself to go from acting in front of a camera, you were cut, going at it, but then there's this live studio audience where the beats are built in and you have to wait for audience reaction, or like, what is the difference? How does it, what do you do there?
It's more like a play. And since I was theater trained in New York, I mean, I was Shakespearean trained, I was used to the theater, the boards, as they say. So for me, it actually wasn't as big an adjustment as it would be if I hadn't come from a theater background. And I wish that they would tell young people starting out that, hey, if you're interested in television and particularly if you're interested in comedic television where you're more likely to have a live audience, you should do theater. I mean, you're definitely going to learn more about the rhythm and flow of the whole thing. And the biggest difference I would say is that in theater, the line is gospel. It's actually illegal to change any of the words without permission. Whereas in television, they might actually change them as you're saying them, one take to the next. They might say, you know what, forget that line, say this instead. So it's much more improvisational to do television than to do theater. But it helps to have had that theater background. It made it less shocking. But I will say it was a baptism by fire. It was the #1 show in the universe, it felt like, but certainly in our country, it was the #1 show by a country mile. There were 32 million people watched that episode. It was like the Super Bowl, that was just the first time it aired. So, it was huge. And I was nobody. And they have warm-up comics that get the crowd ready for the taping, that, keep people loose and in the mood to laugh. And I guess they were trying to pronounce my name. And so the comic had asked if anybody in the audience knew how to say my name. And I had, my manager was sitting in there. So she yelled it out and he couldn't hear her. And so she yelled it out again, and maybe he could and feigned that he couldn't. But in any case, he kept saying it over and over until the whole audience was helping her say it. And so as I'm getting ready to shoot my very first moment of the yes, the whole building is chanting, Cayouette.
Yes.
I had no idea what to do with that. But it made me feel like I was on more equal footing. I felt a little less like the nobody on set. Dina Meyer was in that episode. Like so many people, Ben, John, all these people were in that episode. It was a crazy episode.
Yeah. Does that affect your performance, like in a good or bad way, when you're getting like a direct line to the audience reaction to what you're doing?
Well, I think again, if you're theater trained, you're used to that. You live on that. If you're used to working on camera, I will bet that even if you were alone in just looking in the mirror, saying lines to yourself, that you would feel when they're landing,
Hmm.
even if you're the only audience.
Hmm.
But I will tell you that even if it's just you and there's video village behind some wall somewhere, you can feel whether you're landing. You can feel whether or not you're scoring. And so when you do it in front of a live audience, you definitely feel that feeling of, oh my God, I just landed that joke so well, or I had that moment just so scored or whatever. But the audience can also surprise you and even mess you up a little, because sometimes they find things funny that you didn't know were funny, or strange that you thought were normal, or whatever, like
Yeah.
you just didn't know what you were making when you made it, and the audience has this unusual reaction.
Yeah.
Now, at this time, Ben still had a few films under his belt, but he really wasn't that recognizable face that we all have come to love and know today. And Jon Favreau, of course, he wasn't the big MCU Star Wars director that we now know, having just made Swingers. What was it like working with them so early in their careers? And if someone told you that they would go on, what they would go on to do, would you have even been surprised a little bit?
Honestly, one thing that and now that I don't live in LA, I'm not, my finger is no longer on this pulse, but when you live in LA, actually you already know what's going to happen in 2 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, because projects take a while to set up and they take a while to get rolling, and they're attaching talent, and so you hear what's happening for a year or two or three or four before it happens. So
Mhm.
like nobody in LA is surprised when Brad Pitt becomes the next big thing, or like that. We already know that's happened. You
Yeah.
guys are the last to know, the
Right.
viewing audience, and then you might not agree. You could see the thing we thought was going to blow you away and be like, and
Hmm.
then we all get to be wrong. But I I mean, Jon Favreau, he was the swingers guy at that time, but I understood that he was a voice and a visionary. And Ben Stiller was also a voice and a visionary, much more dark, sarcastic version of it. But he had been around for a while. He had his own show. He had, like, um, we were aware of him, and he grew up there. I mean, he's second generation, so he
Right.
was somebody everybody watched grow up.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
they were both directors at the time, and they sat me down and told me I needed to become a director.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, so I really enjoyed working with them because I felt valued and seen, and they made me feel equal. And I was smart enough to know that I was not their equal at that point, that they were already miles and miles ahead of me.
That's cool
Yeah.
to have that affirmation from people that have been directing, to see that in you at that, even at that stage before you saw it in yourself.
Well,
To
and it
say,
was wisdom
right.
about how to handle your career, about how to be in charge of more, and do more for yourself, not wait for the
Hmm.
job to come around.
Very cool. In 1998, you joined Richard Dreyfuss again in the fantastic comedy Krippendorf's Tribe, which was also directed by Todd Holland, who directed your episode of The Larry Sanders Show. Acting is a lot like day labor or just working a regular 9 to 5 job, where it's like day labor, not like a 9 to 5 job. Okay, you're with a different group of people on every job. You don't have that advantage of being with, building like a second family, pretty much going to the same place every day. Is there like an appreciation when you come to a set, or when you know you're starting a new acting gig and it's got familiar faces there? Is that like a different energy already going into it, knowing that there's a rapport there?
It's actually one of the things I really love about working in Louisiana, because I get to work with the same people often. And so, you arrive on set not with the, oh God, what's it gonna, you arrive instead looking around going, oh, who's here today? Who's here to, because whether it was the recently departed Carol Sutton, or somebody like Dane Rhodes, or, like there's some people that Billy Slaughter. There's some people that are just going to be on set probably, they work all the time. And so I look for the familiar faces. But I've actually been really blessed. I've worked with Quentin 4 times, with Woody Harrelson twice, Juliette Lewis twice, Richard Dreyfuss 3 times, John Schneider 4 times, Michael Madsen twice. Joe Crest, who's on Stranger Things, has been my husband twice. I've worked with the director Misty Talley on 2 shark movies. I've done, I've really had a repeat visit career.
That says a lot for your work.
Yeah.
That you're. I mean, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me, like that kind of thing. Like they're willing, yeah. So that speaks to your performances.
I think it's amazing. Now, before we haven't left the '90s just yet, but this is more of a fan service favorite question for me here, because I'll admit, when we did our deep dive and we told me that we were getting you on the show, I was like, I know who that is, and I know where I know her from. I like, I gotta go out. And so in 1998, also directed by Tony Scott, rest in peace, and starring Will Smith and Gene Hackman, you play Krista Hawkins in Enemy of the State. Let's take the opportunity to talk about the relationship between. Let's talk about that for a second here. When you're an Enemy of the State, what was it like being there? Tell us about that whole experience, how that came about.
That's another weird one. I was in a bar. I was in a bar waiting for a friend who was running late. And before she got there, this guy came and started trying to chat me up. And
you didn't hit him on the head, did you?
I did not. I'm not prone to violence.
I'm just making sure.
I am not. I don't take shit. So, but yeah. So he starts talking to me about the National Security Agency, and he's going on and on about the National Security Agency. Well, at this time, no one knew about the National Security Agency. No one. And so we're playing this game of, did you know? Well, did you know? Well, did you know? Well, did you know? Well, did you know? And finally, I stop him and say, why do you know anything about the NSA? And he's like, well, I'm writing a script about it. And I was like, oh, okay. Because, everybody's writing a script about something in LA. And then he goes, well, how do you know all this? And I said, well, my dad runs it. And he stopped caring whether or not he could hit on me, and instead was like, wait, what? And so he wanted to meet with me and pick my brain and, see maybe I think if he could get closer to my father and things like that. So he turned out to be the writer of Enemy of the State.
Oh, man.
He
Wow.
is how I met Ivana Chubbick. He took me to Ivana Chubbick's class to audit it, and that was how I got my last and went forever. I mean, she was basically my entire LA experience, acting teacher and coach. I mean, I had a few before her, but she was the one that I think worked best for me. He also introduced me to Marilyn Black, who became my manager. And then he set up a meeting for me to meet with Tony Scott. And so I don't know what he told Tony, but I show up in this empty office building on a weekend. Already scary. Sounds like the beginning of a Me Too story, but isn't. And I arrive and he's smoking. None of the lights are on. It's daylight out, but none of the lights are on. And he is sitting in this sort of darkened giant office, toting on this cigar, and there's smoke billowing around, very much like one of his movies.
Yeah.
And we're visiting and chatting, and at some point he goes, you're not at all what I thought you'd be. And I said, oh, really? What did you think I would be? And he goes, well, I thought your dad was a nerd and you'd be the daughter of a nerd. And I said, well, what do you think now? And he said, now I think you're Krista. And I said, oh, who's that? So I went through a grueling audition process. And I hired Ivana to coach me, and I worked my butt off to get that part, because I knew that that it would change everything.
It was amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is in it. And you'll notice that my credit is 7th, which was the only thing I asked for. because back then we didn't have the internet IMDb listings for actors. We had these big movie guides, and if you were not in the first 8 credits, you wouldn't be listed.
Mhm.
And so I wanted my credits 7th so that, you know, Jason Robards and all them, they could all be behind me. So
All right, let's take this opportunity to talk about the relationship between an actor and a director. Golden Globe nominee Dennis Christopher said about you, she wants to know what director wants. Every director has a different approach, but they all want the same thing from you at the end of the day, a fantastic performance. You've actually directed a short film, and we'll discuss that in a moment here. But I want to ask you, you actually get to speak from both sides of the equation. What do you think promotes the most positive results in an actor's approach to receiving direction?
well, I've actually directed 3 short films. But and I did get to ghost direct a little bit on a feature, but I'll leave that out. I think when you're the actor, the trick is to listen and be open. And I would say that's true whether you're an actor at a job or you work at McDonald's. You have to listen and be open. And I think one thing and try stuff, just try stuff, dare to fail, just do whatever the director said to do just to get it done. And then you can do it your way on the next take. But you're not the only authority on the character. And I think a lot of actors get very bent on the idea of like, but my character would never do that. Really? Because the writer said they would. So maybe you don't know your character very well, because the writer who spent maybe years working on this says you would do that. And the director is directing you to do it. So instead of coming from a place of my character would never do that, you have to come from a place of why would my character do that?
Yeah. I like that. That's very good.
And justify it. Figure it out, do the work. That's acting. So, and there are other authorities as well. I write in my book. My book is very practical and it has lots and lots and lots of information in it for working actors. But, the makeup and wardrobe people might know more than you do about your character. I remember when I showed up for Queen Sugar and saw the wardrobe, I was like, oh, she's not who I had pictured her to be. She was who I thought she was as a person, but she wasn't who I had pictured her to be as a presentation of herself. And so rather than me tell, wardrobe and hair and makeup that they don't know their jobs since they've been doing them for years before I come along, I thought, okay, so let me ask them questions about how they came to the conclusion that this is what she wears and this is how her makeup is. And this is how, at some point they had me wearing like a Jerry curl look. I have curly hair and they had me do a Jerry curl look. And I thought, well, that's curious. I'm like one of 3 white people on this show and I have a Jerry curl. So, would that have been my choice for that character? No. But then when I looked at where that character's coming from, I absolutely could see why that was her choice.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, especially like when you're working on a set like Quentin Tarantino's, where there's hundreds of people in the cast and crew. If everybody, like, you have one person that wrote the recipe essentially, and if people are veering off, if the ingredients are getting, it could easily throw off the whole cake.
I concur.
Well, and that is one of the things, though, is that I've been blessed to work with people who really know their work. And so it's better for me to question myself than them in that case. If you're working with somebody, like if you're working with student filmmakers or whatever, I think it's okay to ask those questions. But at the end of the day, even if you're working on a student film, the whole point of that would be to help them become better directors.
Yeah.
And so just trampling all over somebody's ideas is not making them better at their job.
It's a great way to look at it. So now, with the advantage of 25 years of practice under your belt, if you could send a message back to 30-year-old Laura who's getting her first roles, what would your biggest critique be to that actor?
I wrote it in my book that I think that this is the right answer to this, because I have a lot of answers to that question and they change every day.
Well, that's awesome that you have multiple answers for it. I mean, that means you're humble.
Well, because I think, I mean, the whole point of this, journeys around the sun thing is, that we call life is that you learn new stuff every time. My mom compares it to climbing a mountain where, if the mountain's super steep, which, I'm doing a job that less than 1% of people make enough money to survive. So I'm in the same group as Tom Cruise. So that's a hard thing to do. And so if you're going to climb a steep mountain, that if you're in a car and you're going up a really big, tall mountain, you can't just go straight up the mountain. You have to drive around and around and around and around and around. So you might come to the southeast corner again and be like, oh my God, I already saw this view. I already saw all this. And think life is just doing you the same over and over and over. But each time you're seeing it from a little higher, a little better perspective. And if you just remember that even though it seems like, oh my God, haven't I done this before? That each time you're coming from a little better perspective, a little higher, that helps. So for me, the answer to your question today would be the lesson of the 100 auditions, which I write a lot about in my book. The lesson of the 100 auditions is basically the short end of it is that if I had known that the 104th commercial audition I went on would be the one that I would book, then wouldn't I, at 97 auditions failing, been like, woohoo, 97 is over. Get on, there's 98, bring on 98. And I wouldn't have been like, oh my God, 97 auditions and nothing. This is not, just not, like I wouldn't have despaired.
Yeah.
So it's just the perspective of not knowing which one is going to be the one. That's where all the anxiety is coming from. It's not coming from whether or not you're good enough or all that. It's coming from not knowing which one's your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Yeah, like you're working. I guess it's easier in hindsight when you know that the light at the end of the tunnel was coming. When you're in the thick of the tunnel, it's like complete darkness until bam, there it is.
Right. What if you quit at 103 and 104 was your magic number?
Right.
Yeah.
That is, wow. I think out of all the guests that we've interviewed, I think there's been one common theme and they all said in this industry, you'll always get more no's than yes. So you got to keep getting your no's to get more yeses. So, I mean, you got to build up your credit, people. So in 1999, you started an episode of Fantasy Island with Malcolm McDowell. Now, he is known for being such a courageous and bold performer. What was it like working with him?
Well, sadly, I didn't have a bunch of scenes with him. I mean, Lauren Holly was the one who had gone to get her fantasy fulfilled. And I played Lauren Holly's best friend. So my scenes were mostly with Lauren and Brian McNamara. But I will say that experience overall was fabulous. It was shot in Hawaii, which was wonderful. Pauly Shore was in the episode, who was in my acting class, so we were buddies. And Lennox Lewis was in that episode, and he was a hoot. I mean, he's a boxer, not an actor. So I have a great story about that if you had more time. But you're asking about Malcolm McDowell, and I didn't get to work with him that much, but I did hang out with him in his trailer a lot. He was a character, and I like characters. I ran away and joined the circus, and so why would I not hang out with the the people who are so fascinating that people pay money to look at them?
Yeah,
true.
What he did in Clockwork Orange was just amazing to me.
He's so brave.
Yeah.
He's so brave.
I mean, that shot with the eyes being open, that like they literally did that to him. This was pre-special effects, and he just laid there and took it.
Not that I did not know.
When I think of Sam Raimi, before I did the deep dive on you, I would have never put Sam Raimi with a romantic sports drama film. But he did For the Love of the Game, starring Kevin Costner. In the movie, let's just say your scene has a happy ending. I was curious, when you're doing a scene like that, what measures are taken on set to keep a level of professionalism?
Well, I actually have to take the blame for that scene, because it was originally written that my hand was supposed to go under the towel on his back. that I was massaging his back, and then my hand would go under the towel, and that would be the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I was a friend of Kevin's, and we ran the rehearsal, and then we broke for lunch, and I pulled him aside and said, Kevin, you don't want them to shoot it like that. And he said, why? And I said, because your face is like this on the thing, and you look like a wrinkle man. And he said, well, what do we do? And I said, I don't know. I guess flip you over. I don't know. We have to rework this, but this can't be my idea. I'm a nobody, you know, I'm just telling you, go look in the mirror, do this in the mirror and see if that's what you want. And so we come back from lunch, and oh, everything's being reset. And oh, Laura, can we talk to you? We have a new idea and we'd like to run it by you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I've never told this story publicly because of course it's all been movie magic until this moment. But yeah, this is what really happened. So we go to shoot it, and Sam is probably one of the dearest people I've ever met in my life, and a little prudish. And so when it came to the moment for the hand to slip under the towel, I don't know why I didn't do the math that's of course going to have a different body part in my hand. Maybe Kevin did the math, but he didn't.
Yeah, I like how he was real coy about it.
Oh yeah, we can do it that way. Yeah.
When you were bringing it up, he's like, well, what do we do? I mean, there's only one other thing to do here. If you're not on your back, or if you're not on your stomach, you're on your back. What do we do?
Just out my friend's face, you know, like I wasn't thinking it the whole way through.
Okay.
So then it turns into all these conversations about how much credit to give him as I'm moving my hand. Because, you know, if you move your hand too much, it seems like you are making him into a rather, you're giving him too much credit. And if you don't move your hand enough, you're not giving him enough credit. And so, you know, we had to work out all this. And Sam just was blushing and in a corner and didn't want anything to do with it. So it wasn't at all what I'm used to. What I'm used to is that I've spent a lot of my career in my underwear, and including that movie. And I'm used to people being pretty rough about it, you know, expecting me to be a good sport. And that's what I do. I just show up, I be a good sport, and I hope nothing goes seriously wrong. Mm-hmm. And this was nothing like that. This was, it was like, he was so sensitive. He was so sensitive to the entire situation.
It's so ironic that Sam Raimi, who spit 75 gallons of blood into an actor's face on Evil Dead, is but a little sexy stuff. That makes me uncomfortable.
He's so dear. I'm telling you, he's one of my favorite people I ever worked with, and I would love to work with him again. Sam, if you're listening, I'd love to work with you again. He was amazing to work with. He was like he loves movies, and he's so kind, and he's very thoughtful, and he's a very, very good actors director. He really knows how to talk to actors. And I think that's because, like Quentin, he used to be an actor.
Yeah, when I watched all the behind the scenes documentaries on Evil Dead, and that was something that I really appreciated about him, was he has this, like, when he's working on a film, he just has he's just joy is all over him. He just seems so happy to be doing what he's doing. And I guess the prudish thing kind of makes sense, because even Evil Dead, it goes back to slapstick, Three Stooges style. So there's this innocence to all the blood and gore that's happening. It's almost so over the top that it's animated or cartoonish.
Now, from 1999 to 2001, you star in Martial Law, The Pretender, Jag, Meeting Daddy, Baby Love, and Anaconda. I said this right 30 times before we did. Okay.
You notice I looked at him before I even said it, because I knew.
Because I got it right all before rehearsal, and he got it wrong. I'm like, I'm going to kill this. I got it. So, okay. Could you, all right, so for everybody out here, no, I want to get that right. You're not going to do me like that. Thank you. Anacardium.
Anacardium.
There we go. All right. Thank you so much. Now, I feel like a lot of the time I should have been reresearching that more, but the actors who bring supporting roles to life put more thought into the character than the writer has. What is your approach to that? Like turning, as you said before, and he taught me this when we did our research. You quoted this, turning minutes into moments, because that really struck a nerve with me in a very good way. It's like you must really harness every moment and make it yours.
Well, and frankly, a minute is a ton of time in screen world. You know, a minute is, I mean, think of when you have to cut a minute and you're working on a film. Have you guys ever had to cut a minute out of a film? You wanna
Yeah.
slit your
He's
wrist?
cut me out of a film before, so yeah, he's had to cut a minute or two.
You'd rather cut your nose off than cut that 1 minute out. So, you know, it's a lot of time. But I was deeply influenced by my very first feature film working with Shirley MacLaine. I watched her steal a scene right out from under all of us with no dialogue. And when I watched her do that, she had no lines whatsoever in the scene. She was supposed to be basically a background person in the scene. And she stole the entire scene out from under all of us. And I watched her do it. And I could see what she was doing as she was doing it. And I was like, oh, you can give yourself permission to just steal the whole scene. And I thought, well, first of all, Shirley will be the last person to do that to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give myself permission to own my time. And I do. I give myself permission to be unforgettable. I give myself permission to be a whole person in a moment, captured. And I think it boils down to you have to do the scene, you have to do what's written. But I think actors don't spend enough time understanding the scene, understanding like why did the writer put this in here, especially if it's a small part.
Yeah.
Why did it survive all the cuts at all the different levels that it went through of rewrites? And why are the producers willing to pay to film it? You know, like what is this scene's purpose? What happens here that moves the story forward, or that helps us understand a character that is probably a different character than my own, because I'm always next to some gargantuan Oscar-winning, EGOT or something. So, for me, it's like figuring out how the scene works, and then facilitating what the scene was meant to do. And by doing that, I often hear back from directors and writers that I put stuff in there they didn't even know was in there. And I'm like, well, but it was in there. It was in there. I found it,
Yeah, I like that.
Those are the best movies where even the supporting actors, they approach it with the same intensity and nuance that the leads do, and you get that's where the gold is. They're not treating it like some two-dimensional prop. They're a human being living and existing in this world too. That is a perfect segue to talking about your book, No Small Parts. And I love the title, like that. Especially the guests that we have on. That is who's the guy we talked to? Jeff Kahn was on for Tropic Thunder, and he suggested that we call the show. Oh, fantastic! Yeah. He said that we should call the show Hollywood Adjacent, because we talked to so many people who are like right there
on the cusp.
But that title really spoke to me.
I'll take that.
It was so this was published in 2012 as a guide for actors. And before we go into it, I'm going to drop a clip here for the teaser from your channel.
Based on 25 years in the industry as an actor, producer, writer, and director, No Small Parts is real-life advice from someone who's lived it. The foreword is written by Academy and Golden Globe winner Richard Dreyfuss, and the book has been endorsed by Kevin Costner, Lou Diamond Phillips, Reginald Hudlin, and many more. The second edition of No Small Parts has been completely updated to reflect changes in technology and the industry. Rewritten during the COVID-19 pandemic, new chapters include a comprehensive look at self-taping and a chapter on Me Too issues covering what to do if you witness an incident or experience harassment. There are also a few new chapter sections, including an in-depth look at signing conventions. The book also reveals personal, often funny stories from the author's own journey, turning minutes into moments and moments into a career.
All right, you've written a series of mystery novels since, but No Small Parts, and again, that's KNOW for all you guys out there. It seems personal. And what was your motivation? What was your motivation from taking it of you seeing these things and finding these things to saying, I'm now going to put this in a book, because you did say you're a teacher. So was that the motivation part behind it, wanting to teach?
Well, first of all, I did want to say if you were to look at my mystery novels, they're pretty personal as well. They're actually very behind the scenes, and they have a lot of my life here in New Orleans sort of tucked in there, which is nice. But No Small Parts is a nonfiction book, and it came directly out of working on Django. I think by the end of this, you'll realize I give Quentin a lot of credit for a lot of things that I've chosen to do with my life. But I had thought about, writing a nonfiction book, but it wasn't on acting. And then while I was doing Django, that every day I had very similar downtime to the people playing the house slaves, who were predominantly local actors. And so, many of them are now my friends, and we'll be friends till we die because we all live here. So, there was a lot of camaraderie between the house slaves, and I would sit there listening to them having these discussions about how to figure out stuff about acting that for me was really simple, like so simple I would have hard time describing it, because it'd be like trying to tell somebody how to drive a clutch. It was so second nature to me. And they were so baffled by so many things. And I remembered, actually, it's not even realized, I remembered being them. I remembered being in the dark, and that books were what I used as a weapon system. I was a college person. So for me, books were where you found information. And so I started answering their questions, but I started going home and writing them down and thinking, these are the questions people need answered that I don't even remember asking these questions anymore, but these are the questions that are simple for me to answer, that are really, really useful to a huge amount of people. Mm-hmm. And then I kept going and started asking myself things that I would notice that were coming up with Leo, or were coming up with Sam Jackson, or were coming up, like just the workaday life of being an actor, the experience of showing up on a set and having no idea where to report, or what you're supposed to do, or when do you put on your wardrobe, or, like all these really simple, practical questions. And then further down the road, how do you get a free dress for the red carpet? Everybody seems to be able to do that. How do you do that? Like, I don't know, just everything was a mystery when I started out. And by the time I'm sitting around listening to those conversations, it was all like easy for me. And so I wrote that book while I was shooting.
That's awesome. So Lou Diamond Phillips said that you found a way to bottle lightning, or put lightning in a bottle.
Yes.
With that, I don't want to.
By the way, can we just have a moment for Lou? Love Lou.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. La Bamba.
I know what you're talking about.
I know. I wasn't looking at you. I was just looking at you because I knew you knew.
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away that is in the book, because we want interested people to pick the book up. But could you give us like a snippet of the kind of information? Like, I know you just kind of went over the overview, but maybe just like one of the tips of the trade that you have in there.
Well, first of all, it is actually, you couldn't possibly already know everything in that book just from this interview, because I just added over 70 brand new pages in my second edition, which now includes a chapter on self-taping, since that's kind of where we're at from now on. Yeah. And this is here to stay. The self-taping thing is not going anywhere. And because it makes casting so much easier for so many people. Not necessarily the actors, but so many other people. And then I have a chapter on Me Too issues. If it happens to you, if you see it, if you witness it, if somebody comes to you and says, what do I do? Whatever, all that kind of stuff. And also conventions, because when I started out, conventions were where careers went to die. And now it's where you launch Wonder Woman. It's a big damn deal to be in a convention. So I added a lot about that as well. But the thing that I think most actors get wrong, well, first of all, there's the premise The premise is that I am meant to be famous and that all I need to do is get an agent and then I will be discovered and then I will be famous. And first of all, I am not interested in famous. It means people go through your garbage and care who you date. And I am not willing to give up that part of my life, the privacy part.
I was going to say the garbage or the dating. We didn't.
The garbage and the men and all of it. I'm just not willing to have you care that way about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too big a thing. And it has nothing to do with acting. One person you didn't quote from my book is Kevin Costner, who says very, very loud and proud that I'm always about the work. And that's true. I will say that is a true thing. I am always about the work. But I think this thing that people get wrong is they think, like, nobody thinks, oh, if I wanted to be an NFL football player, I would just like go buy a football and then get an agent and be in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But they do seem to think that you could like go get an agent and get discovered, and then you'll get an Academy Award and the cover of People magazine. And none of that is related. Yeah. And so I think the biggest mistake that actors make, or aspiring actors make, but all actors make, is making it about your agent. Mm. I spent most of my career in LA. I was there 18 years. And most of the time I was there, I did not have an agent for film and television. I had one for commercials, so that was half my income and kept my bills paid. But I did not have an agent for film and television. And I had a manager for 6 years, but that leaves out 12 more years. I mean, what? Yeah.
Okay.
I had to do math.
Yeah, I mean, that's if you're looking for fame and celebrity, there are far better avenues to achieve that quickly.
Like being so good, they hire you over and over. Like being so wonderful to work with that they hire you over and over. Like making people inspired to work with you. As Richard Dreyfuss says and is quoted in that book, make it so they can't sleep at night. Make it so they can't sleep at night thinking of ways to put you in their movie. Mm-hmm. And that's what I believe in.
Yes. Now, Reginald Humlin, the producer on Django Unchained, said, "You are a working actor that also has a happy and well-balanced life." I noticed this as while I was researching you. You seem to be a very grounded and involved individual where you live in New Orleans while also managing to stay busy as an actor. As you seem very, very happy. Talk about that balance between, I think you kind of just spoke on it as I was listening to you. It's like you never got into it to be famous. You were happy. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's a huge part of it, is that my goals were not the kinds of goals that are like a drug addiction where you just keep chasing that dragon and it's never going to really make you happy. My goals were always about the work. And that said, I had trouble being happy in LA. I value happiness. It's something important to me. I mean, it's written in our Constitution. I think it's worth pursuing. Mm-hmm. So I care about happiness, and I kept meeting people in LA who really, that wasn't a value system. And I cared about community and feeling a part of the group, the citizenry of my community and my city. And I didn't really, I mean, I lived in LA longer than I've lived anywhere in my life. And I never felt like I was part of that city. I don't know who the people were that were running it. I didn't know what were the problems with their budget, or, because I didn't care. Mm-hmm. I didn't care whether they had potholes. I didn't care, if it didn't bother me, it didn't bother me. Mm-hmm. And because it was just where my job was. It wasn't that I cared about that city. And so that's one thing that's changed a lot, is New Orleans has always been, if home is where the heart is, this has always been my heart's home. My family's from Louisiana for hundreds of years. And this is where, I think every city is weird and every person is weird. And so you have to just find the place where you're weird and the city's weird and meet up. Yeah. And me and New Orleans are in agreement that you should wear colored wigs for no reason and celebrate tomatoes. So, You know, we're in agreement that that's important. I belong to a dance troupe called the Pussyfooters. Um, and it's over 100 women who are over the age of 30, and we dance in the Mardi Gras parades, except this year. And we participate in over 50 nonprofit events annually, although not this year again. And we parade year round. We parade in the Christmas parade, the Halloween parade, you know, all sorts of things. That sense of sisterhood and community, and I mean, that's not normal in LA. I created versions of that in LA. I created a group of women called the Support Hose. and, and we would meet once a week and set goals and check in with each other and do troubleshooting and all that. But, you know, that was something I forced into being. And a lot of the sense of community I had in LA, I forced into being. I made it happen so that I could feel happy there. But it's not part of how that city operates. Whereas it's the only way New Orleans can survive is with community. You don't get through things like Katrina without community.
That's when you moved from Los Angeles to Louisiana, was that a similar feeling of like having to start from ground zero again?
Yes and no, because when I moved to LA, I had actually literally seen it on TV. I had never been to LA. I had no idea what it was. And back then, you know, pre-technology, it's hard to get around a place like LA. We had a thing called the Thomas Guide that was, I don't know, 400 or 500 pages of maps. And you had to be a scholar to figure out how to get from one place to another. And I already told you, people out there weren't. So, you know, it was a complicated way to live. It was full of roadblocks that were really just to get from here to there was hard. Everything was sort of set up to be hard. And it's kind of like how Ivy League schools are set up, where the freshman classes are designed to flunk out the people who aren't going to make it anyway. So yeah, LA was like that, where it was sort of set up in a way of like, if you can't handle the day-to-day life of LA, you probably aren't in the right place anyway. You probably shouldn't be trying to be an actor, because if you think living in LA is rough, wait till you try being an actor, you know. So I don't know. I also, like, for me, when I was in LA, all the conversations were about movies. All the things we all wrote were screenplays. All the things that we made our recreation about were film oriented. Everything was film oriented. And I really enjoyed being immersed in that culture. It was really important for my growth as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, as an actor, to be so like deep dive into that world. But now I get to write books just like I thought I would when I was a kid. And I get to teach like I thought I would when I was a kid. And I still get to do what I love for money, except not this year. Everything's except not this year. But I really, I am going to get to parade next week. I heard I'm going to get to parade in place. They're going to do a drive-through parade, and I'm going to get to parade in place. I'm very excited.
It's a reverse parade. The watchers. Okay.
I'm far too excited about it. I'm way too excited about it because it's going to be miserable and masked and all that, but it's socially distanced, whatever, just waving at cars going by. But whatever, I'm thrilled to be part of Mardi Gras. So, but it's that being a part of when you're in the movie industry, when you're actually working, you get to have that feeling of being part of a community. But I figured out that about myself, is that I need to feel like I'm with my people. And I found my people in LA, and I made a little, group in LA that was for me, but it required so much labor to make it be what it was. Whereas here, it just is already set up. You just walk out your door and you're part of the community.
Yeah. I really like what Richard Dreyfuss said in that video on your page, where he was talking about, some of the best actors, they don't have to be in Hollywood. They could be in a small theater all across the country. You'll find great actors in a community where you can grow as an actor. And I
now
get,
more than ever.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love like the subtitle of your book, the turning minutes in the moments. And I wanted to ask, I know you kind of talked about how you you were never going to let that happen again. But what is your approach to when you have a supporting role and you only have so many, you're only on the screen for a certain period of time? What, like, how do you go about turning those, like, making the most out of what you're given?
I spend a lot of time on preparation. I will say that that's something that a lot of directors that have worked with me have noted and been impressed by, is that I spend a lot of time on preparation. I respect the material, but I bring my own ideas and I dare to fail and I try to leave it all on the floor. I will tell you that for me, and I know I'm not alone with this, the most agonizing moment is not when you don't get the job. That's normal. The most agonizing moment is when you got the job and you're driving home and you go, oh, why didn't I this? Why didn't I that? And the job's already over.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want that for myself. I don't want to spend car rides full of regret, going home from jobs where I should feel victorious. I should feel like I just worked with all these people doing this amazing stuff. I worked so hard to get there, and then I got there and I did a good job. And I shouldn't be sitting there going over what I could have done and didn't do.
Yeah,
That's preparation work. Oh, you prep. What can I do? And then you get on the set and you try things and let them tell you, no, don't do that. Don't have your own censor be like, no, don't try it. No, don't try it. Just, and if you think it's something that's not going to be okay, you can talk to people. Like, I remember I did a movie, Anacardium, which became Deranged. When I was doing Anacardium, it was the very last day of shooting. And I'd been on that. There were only like 3 main characters in the whole movie. And so I'd been on that, for pretty much run of show. And we're shooting the last moment with me. And I said to the director, after we shot the take that as written, I said, do you have that? Are you satisfied? Do you have it the way you want it? And he said, yeah. And I said, do you mind if I do one for me? It's just an idea I have. And he was like, yeah, you want to run it by me? I was like, no, if it's okay to burn, a couple of inches of film on me, I'd like to just do one. And he said, okay. And this is back when we used film. So it was expensive. It was an ask, but I had earned it by then. I had worked really hard to show him that I might possibly have a good idea. So I changed the entire movie by making one gesture. And when the director yelled cut, the whole set went, whoa. and then the director, Scott, looked at me and he was like, well, now what? Now I have to decide which movie I just made. And so we ended up having both endings at Slam Dance Fest, which happens in the same place at the same time as Sundance. Mm-hmm. And he showed both endings and had the audience vote, but he had already decided he was going with my ending. So that movie is rewritten by one gesture I made at the end of the movie.
That's amazing.
That's turning a minute into a movie.
There you go. I really, just listening to you, I really wish more actors took the time to really prepare and do it, as like you say, the preparation and the craft, because I think they miss out on it. We've been on set with actors before and they're like, no, I know my line. I read the script. Like, no, you know your line, but how can you truly know your line, your character, if you don't know what the other principals are doing, or either the people in the back, or why do we switch scenes, things you've already mentioned? So,
well, it's not about lines. If it were about lines, Marlon Brando wouldn't have had a career.
Boom. Thank you. You gotta feel it, man. You definitely have to feel it. Now, I want to ask you this, and I know the answer because technically you answered it an hour ago, because you are the perfect example, which is you also teach acting through seminars, speaking engagements, and coaching. Do you, Laura, think that anyone can learn to act?
I actually had to kind of put that to the test once. I told you I directed 3 shorts. Well, one of them, we needed to hire a bunch of models. I'm sure that's very disappointing news for you that there's a film out there that I've shot that has a bunch of models in it. But in any case, I met a girl at a gas station, and she was 6 foot. She was just the most beautiful. She was striking, and I just couldn't let the moment pass. So we were both blowing air into our tires, and I went and said to her, I said, are you an actor? And she's like, well, I'd like to be, but no, not really, And I said, well, can I come have you read for this thing? So I literally took her off the street, and I did that with a couple other girls in that project that they were not trained, but they were models. And I thought, well, I started as a model, that could happen. And Renee Russo started as a model. So, there are plenty of us who have come from that background where all you were was a look and used to being in front of a camera. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that in the case of, if you're willing to work with the actors, if you're a director who knows how to speak to an actor and not about the result you want, because that is not gonna, if you tell a professional actor a results driven direction, like be less sexy or whatever, they might roll their eyes at you, but they'll do their best. If you tell an untrained actor, they're not going to process that through their brains and go, oh, so I need to find intentions that are different, that make it appear this way. Not like suddenly I'm going to button up my shirt or something and be less sexy. Like that's not.
Yeah.
So if you are the kind of director, who did it brilliantly, who proved that it can be done? The guy who directed Beast of the Southern Wild.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that movie was nominated for Best Director, Best Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress, and it didn't have one name involved in any level of the production. Yeah. And that's the only time that's happened in the history of the Academy. So is that normal? No. But that guy Ben did pull it off. So it can be done if you're that guy Ben, But I don't think that everybody's an actor. I don't think that. I think a lot of people, first of all, do not like cameras, and they don't enjoy that thing of being watched. They don't enjoy being judged, and they sure as heck don't want to be told they're doing it wrong. And they don't like failure. They don't like job interviews. They don't like, if you don't like any of these things, you're not going to like a whole lot about acting, because this is the list. This is the list of what it is. You don't like waiting around doing nothing for hours while you are totally prepared to do the biggest thing in your entire life, but you can't get tired. You can't get ugly. You can't even, like, you have to drink through a straw because you can't mess up your makeup. You can't sit down like a normal person because you're gonna get wrinkles all over your clothes. You can't, like, it's a whole business of you can't have nail polish. You can't, like, everything is you can't.
Yeah.
So if you love acting and it's something that appeals to you, I think then you could become Quvenzhané Wallis and find that, oh, I guess I am an actor. Or Dwight Henry, who not only is a terrific actor, but makes really amazing buttermilk drops. So that's how we know him. We know him as the donut guy. So that's how I got the part. He served them donuts every day. And then they kept auditioning people. And then finally they were like, well, I guess you could read for it. So
that's awesome.
So it can be done, but I don't think it's for everybody. And certainly the lifestyle is for almost nobody. This is a terrible lifestyle.
Keep telling you, man.
So the book, it sounds great. Like, for especially talking to you about it, you go from audition to red carpet and beyond, like holding somebody's hand through this process and letting them know what to expect and how to navigate that. I know that the book is available along with your mystery novels on Amazon, but I wanted to make sure before we put the information out there, if there's somewhere else you prefer people pick the book up from where maybe you get more of that cut.
Well, first of all, I think this is like one of your kindest questions, is that you would worry about whether I make this amount of dollars or that amount of dollars off my book. So thank you for that. But I'm going to pay it forward and say that if you aren't going to buy it on Amazon, I would hope that it's because you're ordering it through your local bookshop and helping them stay alive during the COVID.
Perfect.
Because I make actually like only half the amount of money if you do that. But you know, I value, our local bookshop is just down the street and they carry my books signed, and you can ask for them from there with shipping. But I just feel like local bookshops are a very important part of every community. And so I would say, if you're not going to put the money in my pocket, then help me split it with them.
Right.
Off the top of your head, do you remember the name of the bookshop in your area?
My community is Garden District Bookshop. And you
What
can
is it?
definitely order from Garden District Bookshop, and they have signed copies. And because I live so close to them, if you were to order something personalized, they could probably call me and have me come and personalize it for you.
So
So
there you go.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
But you can order it from your own. You can order it from Barnes and Nobles near your house. You can order it from any bookshop would carry it. I mean, would order it in for you.
Okay.
Awesome. That's
Very
amazing.
nice.
Make sure we follow up on that. Thank you so much. Now, in 2004, you wrote and directed your first film, a short called Intermission. With someone who has acting experience, what was it like now directing and being behind the camera as opposed to in front of it?
Directing is a sticky wicket for me to talk about, and because I loved everything about it. And it was I have a very big, busy brain, and it likes to chew on stuff. And directing was the only activity I've ever done that used every single part of my brain. And so I loved it. I loved it. But I think at the end of the day, some of the actor in you, you know, you have to get your day done. You have to get your day done, and you have to be on time and under budget every day, or else's start happening, you know.
Mhm.
And so it's I think everything I bring to it as an actor helps me to talk to the actors, and helps me to not give those result driven directions, like, you know, be less funny, or be more sexy, or what, you know. So I don't give those kinds of directions. I give more actable direction. But I wouldn't say that acting is the only path to being good at directing. It's just that that's where I came from. And for me, I would say that writing was just as critical. Understanding why things are written the way they're written, and understanding what each scene is for,
Yeah.
is at least as important as coming at it from an actor. I think being a writer really helps me as an actor as well, because I break down the scene thinking of what the writer intended.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In 2004, this was your first time working with Quentin Tarantino, playing Rocket in Kill Bill Volume 2. And since this episode is about Django Unchained, we will take a brief intermission. Right here. Thank you.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
We'll take an intermission right there to talk about that relationship. So you've worked with Tarantino as an actor as well as a co-producer, and he has undoubted he like he's kind of up there with Sam Raimi. There's no doubt how much he loves film and just the whole process from beginning to end. What's it like working with somebody like that on set?
I hear Scorsese is a different version of that same cinephile, movie geek, but it's infectious, is what it is, in the best possible way. I know infection right now is sort of a bad word, but it's infectious in the best possible way. You know, Sam loves movies, and he respects the history of movies. And one thing that he and I had in common is that we both dressed for work. A lot of people wear sweatpants to work in our field, and especially because somebody else is going to give you clothing and somebody else is going to do your hair and makeup. And so why would you bother?
Mm-hmm.
Why not just wear something that you can sit in a makeup chair in? And I'm always aware that I wear something where I can get it over my head without disturbing hair and makeup. But I dress for work. I wear clothes as if I'm going to work. And Sam did that as well. He wore, every single day, he wore a black jacket over whatever else he was wearing. And so he looked like a reservoir dog pretty much every day at work. And I commented on it at some point, and I was wearing a dress, as I'm saying to him, you know, I keep noticing you dressing for work. And he talked to me about the glamour of Hollywood and how the industry was always seen as a place for glamour, and that we, you know, we treat it like a gym locker, and that he just didn't want to do that. And I that was exactly how I felt. This was a profession I had worked super hard to be a part of, and why would I wear gym clothes to my? I'm not a gymnast.
Awesome.
Yeah, it made sense to me to wear actor clothes to my acting work, you know, and actor clothes are that you look nice.
In 2008, you guys co-produced the film Hell Ride, which you also starred in, shared a scene with Michael Madsen again. And also Larry Bishop also acted in this, Kill Bill Volume 2. So it seems like there's an organic working relationship there. Can you talk to us about that? Because it kind of seemed like this came together with people who had all been, you know, intermingling, who had 7 degrees of separation, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think it's funny that you spotted that from the couch. I don't know how you figured that out from your vantage, but you're absolutely right. Score. You're absolutely 100% right. I was over at Quentin's house and we were talking about biker movies, and I said something or maybe he said something about Larry. I don't know who brought up Larry first, but somebody mentioned Larry Bishop, who is the son of Joey Bishop from the Rat Pack. And Larry Bishop had a long career as a biker back in the 60s and 70s in biker movies when they were very hot. And then he went on to play a biker type character on things like Laverne and Shirley. He's the one that hangs them on the hooks, you know, in the opening credits. Anyway, so Larry, Quentin or one of us brings up Larry, and I say something about I know him, and Quentin goes, "You know Larry Bishop?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wait, like you know him? Like, or do you like know him?" And I was like, "No, I know him. I mean, I would call him right now." And he's like, "You could call Larry right now?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay." So I called him, and I had, you know, as before we were all cell phone people. So it was I just called him because I knew his number, and I dialed it on a phone and said, "Hey, I'm calling from Quentin's house and we're talking about you," which came, of course, as glorious news to a guy who hadn't worked in a while. And I said, "Look, he's a huge fan of your biker movies. He wants to do a biker movie at the house, and we'll all watch it together." So Quentin set up in his movie theater that he would show I think it was a double or triple feature of biker movies. And so Larry and I show up, and he has replaced all the posters in his theater with Larry's movies.
Nice.
And yeah, and you know, you get to grab whatever candy and popcorn you want or whatever. And then we settle in. He has made a trailer reel of, I don't know, maybe at 6 or 8 trailers of movies that Larry was in. And then we sit and watch a couple of his movies. And when it was done, we sat and talked. And now at this point, it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. And we sat and talked about biker movies. And other than Easy Rider, which is not even considered traditionally a biker movie, I hadn't really understood the genre. And so we talked a lot about it. And finally, at some point, I'm there at the moment that Quentin looks at Larry and says, "Larry, it is your destiny. It is your destiny to write, direct, and star in the greatest biker movie of all time." So I am not going to say that we made that movie, but that's what we were trying to do.
Talk about pressure. Like
that is a hell of a story.
Yeah.
We cast Michael Madsen that night. And so that night it was me, Larry, and Michael were the original cast. And Larry and I went to work on the screenplay. And you know, that's it.
It's so cool that things like that still happen, because it's so easy to be cynical about Hollywood that, like,
Well, it did take 7 years though.
Yeah.
There you go.
But the fact that it just kind of organically was decided upon, and there wasn't like, let me call my people and let me talk to. It was like inspired in the moment and came from that. I think that's very neat.
Well, it does become that, the my people, your people thing, and that's what takes the 7 years. So, yeah, it took 7 years to get it made for a variety of reasons that include, everything from the professional, like you're saying, my people, your people, conversations, lawyers, yada, 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 to things like a marriage blew up in the middle of it that was tangential to had nothing to do with our movie. It wasn't anybody involved in our movie, but that marriage blowing up involved one of our players having to stay on a project for a year longer than they should have because of the marriage going, so like many things went sideways. Many things go sideways on every project you ever get involved in. And this one, everybody, every time you make a movie, they think you should have made a movie about the making of that movie. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even on an independent level, where we make small feature films here from Florida, and it's anxiety ridden going into it, especially when you have like a larger cast and crew. There's so many revolving lives that you have to rely on. Right? Please, for the like, I have an old man that is a reoccurring character in my movies, and every time I literally tell him like, just don't die for the next 6 months, please.
So I was producing a movie that I haven't shared anything about because I was producing this movie. I was very excited about the project. It had a lot of really A-list amazing people involved. We were toting along, boop, 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 having it. It's going to happen. And I was just signing contracts, and my partner died.
Whoa.
So
Yeah, it's like
it happens.
It's like, golly, wow.
it was his script, his movie, his project, and I was not a co-producer. I was the executive. We were making this movie together. And he died.
He had to go. What a rascal!
Wow, man, that is wow. Okay.
So that's when you're deep into the shit happens world,
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed when I was looking at the IMDb, it kind of seems like you and Quentin Tarantino make a habit out of working together every time there's a presidential election. In 2012, you're Laura Lee Candy Fitzwilly.
There you go.
Thank you. In Django Unchained, sharing the screen with a plethora of Hollywood heavy hitters. How long were you on set for on that, and what was that experience like?
I was on that movie for about 5 months, and it was the longest that I've been on a movie. I had the script way in advance because Quentin used to send me all of his scripts to read, just to give notes and stuff. Yeah. And so when I got the script initially, I thought that's what it was. I was here in New Orleans, hadn't seen Quentin in a while. I get the script. I mean, we had talked, but I get the script and I just thought he wanted me to read it and give him notes. So I'm reading it and writing all over it and whatever. And it was a 200 plus page script. And so I am deep in, I'm like on page 90 when I read Laura Lee Candy Fitzwilly, a 40-ish, attractive, strawberry blonde. I'm like, whoa, what? And so I backed up. 40-ish, attractive, strawberry blonde, Southern belle. Wait, what? And so that's when and my name is very similar to the name. And I'm Laura Lynn Cayouette. That's Laura Lee Candy Fitzwilly. So I just was like, wow, is this for me? So I didn't know if it was for me, but I had that script at least a year before we shot. And then I went through the audition process and got the part. And then I had about 5 months between the time I was given the part and the time that I had to show up for work. No, I'm sorry, 3 months. 3 months before I got the part, something like that. So I had enough time to work on it for real, like I used to when I was in theater. I got to develop the character. I got to write a diary for her and create a photo album for her and, like a scrapbook. And I got to borrow a hoop skirt from the wardrobe department and walk around looking like an hole in my city, with my friend Dana, who plays Cora in the movie. And Dana and I are walking in. I'm wearing my hoop skirt. She's wearing petticoats. I'm wearing a Saints t-shirt with my hoop skirt, She's like wearing regular clothes and this petticoats. And we're walking along with her holding an umbrella over me as tour buses are passing. I'm like, I don't even want to know what they're making of this. I can't even imagine what they're thinking of. There goes the white chick in the hoop skirt with the Saints shirt.
Yeah, in Los Angeles,
If no one even blink an eye, wouldn't even blink an eye.
Blink an eye in LA, but yeah. What the hell?
It was a little odd, but I got to really prepare, like really, really prepare. And so that was months. And then I got to shoot for 5 months and be her for 5 months. And so it was probably the most grueling experience of my entire career, but certainly the most rich, and gave me an opportunity to do what I do well.
Yeah.
And you did yes. That you did do well. Yes, you did. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, you're sitting at a table with Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel L. Jackson, and Kerry Washington. Now, if you were to write a film, and of course you were in the lead, and you needed a co-lead out of those people at that table, who would you choose as an actor yourself that you think you had the most chemistry with? Or who would you choose?
Well, first of all, I think this is a kind of a cruel question, because then I have to pick a favorite kind of thing. And you're talking about an entire table of Academy Award winners and nominees, BAFTA winners, Emmy winners, Golden Globe winners. I mean,
the egos have a long way to fall right now.
They're all tuning in now.
They're all people who, in their own way, are amazing. And like Sam Jackson is the biggest box office of the entire history of cinema. Mm-hmm. Kerry Washington had a brand new TV show come out while we were shooting called Scandal, So like there was all kinds of stuff. These are amazing people who are truly great at what they do. But I'm going to give you two answers: the one that you'd expect, and then the one that you weren't ready for. I pick Leo because I really, really enjoyed working with him. I had actually known him when he was a 16-year-old, because he was represented by an agency where I had a summer job as a receptionist. And so he and his dad used to come in and wait in the waiting room, and I would hang out in the waiting room because that's where I worked. So so they would hang out with me in the waiting room. And so I remember him as a kid, and that really helped me with my preparation to play his older sister. And when he showed up right away, but certainly as the days wore on, and working on Quentin's movies, you have the longest days in the history of the world. But working with him as the days wore on, it became very clear to me that he was like Shirley MacLaine. He never let 1 millisecond of time go empty. Mm-hmm. He and Shirley MacLaine are the two only actors I've ever been so swept away by watching them live when we're supposed to be filming, that I forgot we were filming. And I mean, at some point on Django, I'm at that table and I hear Quentin's voice going, Laura, you gonna say your line? And I was like, oh, right, I'm in this movie, because I just got so...
That's incredible.
He was captivating. But the answer you're not ready for is that you left somebody off that table. Dennis Christopher.
Oh, yeah.
He is at the table. Oh, my.
Who I have been so blown away by since I saw him as a kid in the Breaking Away movie. And I will tell you that of everybody I was working with, he was the one that I was like, I can't believe I get to work with Dennis Christopher. I couldn't wait to work with him. And we've remained friends to this day. But I had met him one time at the Apple store, and I'm not a fan person. I don't do the fan thing, but I like literally interrupted his business at the Genius Bar to say, pay attention to the fact that I'm madly in love with your work. Like I had to tell him, I had to say, you're amazing. I'm such a fan. Yeah. And so yeah, Dennis Christopher, I've been a fan of since I was a kid and saw him in Breaking Away. I just thought he was a genius in that movie. He was so good. And he's like me. He's method trained. He's classically trained. He's theater trained. He's Shakespearean trained. He's hyper trained like me, and trained in many of the same ways that I was trained. And he was the only other person at the table that was trained that way.
Speaking of method trained, I know you leave the scene shortly before this happens, but what can you tell us about? I've heard that when Leonardo DiCaprio cut his hand, he kept performing. Can you speak on that at all?
Well, that's all true. Everything you heard is true. I was working that day, but I left right before that happened, and because, like I said, these days were super long, and I spent them in a corset, so it was a lot with 6 pounds of hair on my head, and it was a lot. I iced myself more in the time that I worked on that movie than in my entire career doing gymnastics and volleyball. So I got a call saying, "Oh my God, you're not gonna believe what just happened." And so somebody called me from the set and told me the entire story. But I had already been watching the scene before I left, so I knew exactly which scene they were working on, and exactly he's captivating. So I stayed and watched like 3 or 4 takes before I went home. But we shot that scene for like 3 weeks. You couldn't sit and watch all of it, like there's just too much. So at some point you have to say, an embarrassment of riches, I'm going home. So I went home and I get this call saying, "Oh my God, you're not gonna believe what happened." And they describe pretty much what you see on the screen, which is that he had been slamming his hand on the table, and each time he slammed it, it was making this little cocktail glass jump and move a little teeny tiny bit. And so at some point he slammed his hands down and it had moved under where he put his hand. And so he smashed it, and it cut his hand, and I believe was it 12 stitches, 16 stitches? It was a lot of stitches.
I assumed that it was like chalked up a little bit for like it might have been like a scratch or a paper cut or something like that, but they to make the story that's crazy. And he kept going.
Lesser men and women would have certainly just fainted and been done. Okay, I mean, he gashed his hand. He gashed his hand and finished the scene.
Spoiler alert, you go out in, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, like, it's probably one of the top 10 get your ass out of here scenes in a film ever. You go out in style in Django Unchained, literally blasted out out of frame by the title character played by Jamie Foxx. So let me ask you this. We like to teach people here at TTFT, you're a teacher, and there's practical effects and there's special effects. This seemed like a practical effect, but tell us, how was that shot pulled off?
Well, Quentin, as far as I know, has never done a special effect. He only does practical effects. He does in-camera work, and I like that. And I think most of us old schoolers do like that. It was the way they would have done it in 1920. It was, I had a rig.
Just a horse and a rope.
We're going three, pull her.
It was, it's like a cartoon. It's like Wile E. Coyote. I have a rig on under my my uniform, my costume. I have a rig on that has a hook on the back, and the hook comes through the back of the dress and is got a hook to a rope, and the rope goes up over a pulley and back to a man on a ladder.
Oh my gosh. Movie magic, love.
Yeah.
How many times did you have to do that? Please tell me it was not more than 2 or 3 times. How many times?
They spent 3 weeks pulling.
No, I did it 4 times the first day.
Oh wow. Okay.
Then 2 days later, when I was good and sore, they told me I had to do it 2 more times.
And then they wind up telling you, we use the first one.
Oh, I am sure they used from the first. I am 100% sure of that. I was when we were shooting the second day. I already knew. This is showbiz, man. Just suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah.
Like just do the thing. Just do the do. And I also heard it was in the top 3 favorite moments of the film globally. And there are very few things that we agree on as a globe, and especially when it comes to humor and violence. And yet, globally, it was in the top 3 moments, whether you were in China or Iran or wherever you watched it. So that's pretty exciting.
How does that make you feel? That like people love watching you get shot to smithereens. Like, that's my favorite part. When
When they yank her ass up out of there, yeah.
is it a compliment or?
I'm going to tell you, my brother is the one that put this in context for me when I did Kill Bill. When I did Kill Bill, I originally had a part that was about 15 pages, and it shot in China, and I didn't get to do it. And so I ended up with the part that you see where I play Rocket, and I don't die. And in the original part that I had, I would die vaingloriously on scene. And so when my brother saw Kill Bill Volume 2, he's a little brother, so he's designed to annoy me and pick on me. And I'm designed to annoy him and pick on him. And so he saw the movie and was like, yeah, it was good. But you're nobody till you die in a Tarantino movie. So I feel like that the second that my death became like a big dang deal, that made me a big dang deal,
What's your favorite memory from that set?
As you can imagine, with so much time being put into it, I have literally hundreds of favorite memories of that set, including sitting around with all the background people and all, for hours a day and just shooting the shit with the locals and all that. I have a lot of really fun movie memories and a lot of memories that are just about being in my own neighborhood, working with my own neighbors. I would say the thing that stands out as unique to Quentin and working with Quentin is that between every take, not between every take, but pretty much, between setups, he will play music. The sound guy will play music. And lots of genres, just like Quentin is interested in a lot of movies, he's also interested in a lot of music. You probably can tell that from his soundtracks. Mm-hmm. And so there's always a lot of music going on, and you never know what the next song is going to be. And as I mentioned, our days were very, very long. And so we would do things to entertain ourselves and each other. And all of us are born entertainers. So I remember the day we were doing the table scene and it was going really long. And at some point they put on Bobby Brown's My Prerogative, and Jamie got up and, the balcony that went around Candyland?
Yeah.
On the inside? Not the outside one, but the one on the inside. So he's dancing up on that balcony, and the girls all knew the video. So they're all doing the right dance in unison as Jamie, who is a professional singer, is singing the song. That was fun to watch. But of the dancing, singing, so the answer is dancing, singing. But of the dancing and singing, my favorite dancing, singing moment is that Sam Jackson it's the night that we're filming the funeral scene, coming back from the funeral. And so it's the middle of the night. It's, I don't know, 3-4 in the morning. And they had already blown up Candyland. And so we're only going to be able to film in one direction because we can't show Candyland because it's already been blown up. And it actually 2 days later was still smoking. So there was a pyrotechnic issue, but anyway, so the Antebellum mansion is in the background smoking and blown up. And Sam Jackson is dressed in his velvets. He had those beautiful dress velvets because we're coming from the funeral. And the song that is played is Thriller. And Sam just starts doing the entire Thriller dance.
Oh, wow.
And with the background of the smoking Antebellum mansion. And I was like, John Landis never had it so good. Like, this is...
Yeah. Oh, man.
There was like maybe 20 of us in the whole world that got to see it.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that may answer the question, but you let us know. I was going to say, before we move on, finally, is there anything else you'd like to share about the film that fans of the film may not know, or just moments that they never would have saw it? I think you gave us one, but is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I'll tell you something that y'all would never know, because why would you, is that this was a wonderful opportunity for all of us, and especially those of us who were the Southern locals, for us to dig into our own heritage and have really long, deep conversations about our different versions of our heritage. I am the descendant of slave owners, and and it's possible I'm also the descendant of slaves. And then many of the people that I was working with were certainly the descendants of slaves and the descendants of free people of color. And it gave us all this opportunity to look at our own history and our own family legacies and have open, grown-up discussions about all of it in the present tense, given the context of that we're all sitting around in corsets, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was really intense and important and meaningful. And I think the whole world might be better if we just would talk about the things that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That'd have been amazing to be
That's
in that
cool
dialogue.
that it had a conversation going behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. In 2011, you worked with Richard Dreyfuss again in the short film Lone Star Trixie, which you wrote, directed, and starred in. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, this again is going to bring us back to Quentin. I wrote this script called Lone Star Trixie that was a modern day female Western and was clearly written far before its time. But Quentin read it and said that it was a work of genius that needed to be made. And he also said that I had to direct it. And unlike Jon Favreau and Ben Stiller, when they told me I should direct and I did nothing with that, when Quentin said it, I heard it. And I directed Intermission. I wrote, produced, and directed Intermission in order to learn how to direct because I had never directed. Why would I know how to direct? So I did Intermission to become good enough to do Lone Star Trixie. And in the meantime, I did another one in between those two. And when I did Lone Star Trixie, I did it on somebody else's dime. A producer came in and wanted to shoot that 8-minute piece to try and help with financing the film. And one of the rules was that in order to get the money, I had to play Trixie, which was not my intention. I had written it for an actor that I admire quite a bit, who's in my age range, but is not me. And so I had not written it as a vanity piece. So that's one thing that was a little hard for me, was that I had written it so that I could work on the directing. And then I needed to work with other people helping me direct because I was starring in it. So it was, you know, you do what you have to do to get the money, right? So, which was a great opportunity. And, you know, I am now, because I never made the movie, I am now the only person, I am Trixie. So since it's a character I wrote lovingly that Quentin thought was a work of genius, I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. Richard came on board to play Virgil, who's the jaded director who has a breakdown on camera. And then Marcia Monroe, who I love. I think she's one of the most hardworking, gifted, talented actors out there, and I wish more people knew her work. But she's worked quite a bit, so I'm sure you do know her work and just don't realize it if you don't know the name. But in any case, Marcia Monroe came to play along with us, and we just shot it. You know, we found locations through our crew and shot it all in a weekend.
Was there ever a moment on set where the irony was appreciated, that your first starring role was directed by Richard Dreyfuss, and now here you are directing him?
I don't know if anybody put it into high relief that way. What I do know is that was a really fulfilling experience for both of us. There's a photograph of the two of us hugging afterward. That's probably like one of my favorite pictures of a hug ever, because you can just see so much history and love and respect and admiration and willingness to put yourself out there for somebody between the two of us. Like, we really have both gone the distance for each other. And I appreciate him showing up for me in that way. And he, I'm sure, appreciated that. He told me he wanted to direct, and I found him a short film to direct. And then when I was directing my own, he came and starred in it. So both of those projects are actually all my engine. but you know, he was the first person to direct me on camera.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. I'm telling you, I'm definitely getting your book. If there are more stories like this in your books, I gotta just, I mean, just the things you're saying, I gotta get it. So, let me say this for the sake of time, we're gonna need to kind of gloss over a decade of good work from Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, which is a highly underrated film, even though he won't think so. To Now You See Me, True Detective, Dark Places, Maggie, House of Cards, Queen Sugar, to American Reject just recently. Is there a particular character that stands out to you for yourself?
Well, some of those I got cut out of, so some of those stand out to me as like a knife in my heart. But really, one that you didn't mention is I actually two that you didn't mention. I loved this character I played in Convergence, which was it was a really weird. It was such a fascinating plot. I loved the story, and it was one of the few times that when I got the script, the character appeared to me fully formed. And that's only happened to me a couple times. She moved in a weird way that wasn't me at all. And she demanded things of me that were strange to me. And that's only happened to me a couple of times where a character just shows up fully formed. And I have to call the director and say, I know you hired me, but this other person has shown up to do this part. So is this okay with you? So yeah, she just showed up fully cooked. And I love her character. She's just dear, and she's a church lady, but she's a fighter, and so I really love that character. And I like that movie a lot. It's a really clever movie, and it just never got enough traction. And it's Clayne Crawford and Michael T. Williamson and Ethan Embry. It's a great cast, and it's a terrific story, and I highly recommend it for people who are sitting home at COVID going, what do I watch next? And then the other thing that I really enjoyed this character, she's terrible, she's just awful, is I did a recurring part in a TV show called Hot Date that was a sketch comedy show. And I'd never done sketch comedy on camera. And I play Linda, who is the mom of Brian Murphy, who is the star along with Emily Axford. And so I play Brian's mom and Emily's mother-in-law, future mother-in-law. And that character, her introduction is that she's the Godfather. The way they film her is just like the Godfather. And she is so Southern evil. She is just, sugar all over that honey. I mean, all over the knife as it's going right into you. I mean, she's evil and in a really fun way to play. I mean, I don't get to play that much evil, and she is terrible. She's just terrible. And I had a lot of fun playing her.
I could imagine playing evil from a comedy standpoint would be very fun to just kind of channel those parts of you. All right, so 1 Month Out is currently in post-production. It's a film written and directed by John Snyder. You mentioned that you've worked with him before, co-starred 4 years prior in the film Hate Crime. Can you tell us about that?
Well, we did Hate Crime as husband and wife, and I had been with that movie Hate Crime since, since 2010. I had been with that movie, and it didn't get made until, what year did you say? I mean, it took us a long time to get that movie made. And so in that time, my husband was many different people. And actually, I was a different character to begin with. I had been the other mother. And it's a story of two different families, two different parents whose children, there's a hate crime. It's more complicated than that. It's actually a love story, but it's very sad. And so I had originally been the mother of the other kid, and so I had husbands as that part, and then I started having husbands as this part. We did readings and promotional materials, and I had many different husbands. But when John Schneider was eventually selected to do the actual film, I was thrilled with that because we had great on-screen chemistry, I thought, but we also really enjoyed working together. And he's somebody who, he's been doing this since he's 18, and he just is, he's good at working. He works a lot. And so I really enjoyed working with him. Then he cast me in 3 different movies that he did afterward. And they were usually smaller parts in like crime movies. And then 1 month out was this totally different kind of movie. It's me and Barry Bostwick, and he has Alzheimer's. And I am actually like the star of the movie. And it's the only time I've ever been the star of the movie. And so Barry is my husband. He has Alzheimer's, and it is unclear whether I am a gold digger who is taking advantage of his Alzheimer's, or if I am a wife who is losing her partner. And so it's a like Convergence, it's a movie that keeps changing which movie it is as you go along, which I loved about Convergence, and I really like a lot about 1 Month Out as well, is that you don't really know which movie you're watching until you've already watched it. But I got to dance the time warp with Barry, like I got to do really fun things. So that was all really great. But that movie, we shot it 4 years ago. And yeah, and it's one of those stories again. It ended up, John Schneider has had a colorful 4 years that include a very splashy divorce during his time on Dancing with the Stars, after which at some point he ends up in jail. So, yeah, and that's not even why the 4 years took so long, because that's only part of the story. Then at some point there are 2 different floods in Louisiana, neither of which are attached to storms. They're just floods. Like you can't even name them. It's just, it rained a lot. And so one of them, a third of the state, I mean, you might have heard about it in the news, a third of the state flooded and displaced millions of people. And there was no relief because it wasn't even a named storm. And the movie was in John's house, which was in the floodplain. And so a neighbor had to go out in a boat and rescue it as 3 feet of water are running through John's house.
Wow.
And yeah, so this happens twice. So there's a whole bunch of story as to why that movie's not out yet. I have no idea when it'll come out.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, let's talk about something that actually is going to be like you're the writer and producer on a biopic starring Orlando Jones, one of my favorites. It's called About the Life of Dr. Bobby Jones of the BT Network, of course, called Jones. According to IMDb, it is in pre-production at the moment. What can you and are you allowed to tell us about the project and what inspired you to write it?
I could tell you more.
That's good enough for me, Jones.
It was asked. Orlando Jones and I've known Orlando. I've known him since we used to call him OJ.
Okay.
Since that was an okay thing to do. Okay.
That was prior to 96.
Right?
Yeah. No, I've known him since like 92, 93. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, if the name fits.
Right.
Right. Since he was a writer on Mad TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he wasn't even, people didn't even know him in front of the camera yet. So I've known him for a whole long time and adore him. He's great. He's fascinating and funny and talented and amazing. And I wrote the script because I was asked. Carl, who is the producer, had asked me to write this script, and I wasn't familiar with Dr. Bobby Jones. And along the way, I did get to meet him after I'd already written it. And I had a very weird experience writing that script and was so insecure about meeting him. And the first thing he said to me is, it's as if you looked into my soul. And so I felt very, very good about that, especially because I came to it with no experience of him and felt like maybe I wasn't the right person for the job. But I did know Southern is Southern. So
Yes, true.
yeah. And Southern families, especially here in the deep, 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 deep mosquito-ridden South, we have a lot in common. So, yeah. So, I don't know when that's coming out. I don't know when that's going to be made. I don't know. I am also working on another project that's a documentary film that's about New Orleans. It's about the French Quarter and over tourism. And so I'm working on that. I don't know when that'll be done either. So,
Keep us posted, please.
2020, 2021, the years of uncertainty.
Right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, thank you very, very much for your time. Audience, check out LauraCayouette.com. I will put the words up here so people like me will be able to find it.
Laura, thank you so much again. It was such a pleasure. We learned so much and had such an awesome time. Thank you for taking a chance on us, and we will do right by you. Thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate you guys including me, and thank you so much. You had very interesting questions. These were new ones for me.
Yeah, very interesting answers. I appreciate you taking so much time. I know we went way over the 30 to 60 minutes that I introduced this with. So
thank you again, and you have an awesome day.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.